Hello there, and welcome to Unqualified Opinions for this week's episode of Weekly Pick'ems. I'm Marko Yerkovich, joined by Paul Hires. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your own unqualified opinions in the comments section down below. And also, don't forget to check out our 2.5-hour live stream of the 2020 NBA Draft. We put a lot of effort and care into that, and it was really fun. So we'd appreciate if you'd go over, give it a listen, like that video, and of course, as always, again, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to get notified. So before we get into the pick'ems, obviously, it's the time for everyone's favorite Unqualified Opinions mini segment, Just the Numbers, with Paul Hires.
All right, well, this week has been better, to say the least. Just 12-12, not perfect, but I will take it.
Average.
Over a 5-25 record last week. So let's take a look at the standings. Tim at the bottom still at 26-28, but caught his way back up, going 3-1 last week. Will and Marko now tied for fourth at 27-27 each, and exactly the same records in both the NFL and college football at 12-13 in the NFL and 9-8 in college football. Jared now down to third after going 1-3 this week at 30-24 overall. And get this, Jared started out the college football picks 8-0. Since then, he has gone 1-8. So it was looking promising for our college football expert. And now it's back down to 9-8 with the rest of us. I'm up at number 2, 31-23 overall. And Joseph with a comfortable 5-game lead up in first at 36-18, 19-6 in the NFL, 11-6 in college football.
All right, so yeah, let's get straight into it with this week's pick'ems. A lot of college football and then some NFL later on. So first up, of course, our weekly dose of Nebraska football. Got the Illinois Fighting Illini at the Nebraska Cornhuskers Saturday at 11 a.m. on BTN. Jared, Joseph, Tim, and Will all going with Nebraska. Paul, who's your pick in this one?
Regardless of the bias, I really think Nebraska is the better team here. Credit to Illinois for winning a game last week against Rutgers, but let's be honest, it's Rutgers. They have been better, but I just don't think they're quite there yet. And Illinois kind of came away at the last second. Both teams have really had some quarterback controversy, still trying to find which one their starter is. But overall, looking at the numbers, Nebraska is just better across the board. 3 points more per game, giving up 2 points less per game. Just little deficits. But I think Nebraska is going to get the job done when it matters. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means, but I think they get the job done.
Right, I agree with you completely. Nebraska's game against Penn State, although Penn State has the name brand, they are not that good right now. And then Illinois, being a Rutgers team that felt like they were on the up and up, but they're still Rutgers, let's be honest. So I don't know what either of those wins really mean. But what I do know is, like you said, Nebraska's got the better numbers, got the better athletes, got the better coaches. I think this should be a comfortable win for Nebraska, but nothing ever is. So I'll pick Nebraska, but not super confidently. So let's move on to a top 10 matchup in the Big Ten and in college football. Not the top 10 matchup you would have thought would be happening at this time of the season, but it's the number 9 ranked Indiana Hoosiers at the number 3 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, Saturday at 11 a.m. on Fox. Jared, Joseph, Tim, and Will all going with Ohio State. Paul, who's your pick?
And I really hope this is going to be a good one. And at the same time, I really hope that Indiana can do something and maybe pull off a win here. But I don't see it happening in this game. Ohio State, we talked about numbers in the last matchup, and Ohio State did give up 27 to Rutgers, which doesn't sound bad, but let's be honest, it's Rutgers. And this is the number 3 team in the country that didn't look like the number 3 team in the country. I really would have liked to see them play Maryland last week just to see how they would adjust to more of a higher-powered offense. I think Indiana's definitely got the better defense. Shutting out Michigan State holding their opponents to 19 points a game has been doing better than Ohio State's defense so far this year. But I think in the end, Justin Fields and the Ohio State offense is just going to be too much, and I think they get the job done. But I don't think it's going to be a blowout. But I think they win this game.
All right, so the previous pick, Nebraska over Illinois, was a clean sweep, and I'm going to make this Ohio State game a clean sweep also over Indiana. That being said, I think Indiana's the best they've been. You've seen all the graphics of them. Oh, it started 3-0 or 4-0 in Big Ten play for the first time since like 1987. Joined the top 10 for the first time since like 1966. I mean, a lot of milestones being passed here by this Tom Allen team. I think they're really good. I think this game is going to be super close. I think Indiana may even have a chance to win this one late on. I'll actually be rooting for Indiana, even though I'm picking Ohio State. I really, really, really want to pick Indiana, but I just can't bring myself to pick them. Like you said, Ohio State's defense is far weaker than it was last season. That'll happen when you have 3 first-round picks taken off your defense and 2 dudes taken in the top 5. They had an amazing defense last year. It's a lot weaker now, although Justin Fields and the offense are maybe better, especially Justin Fields. So I think they've just got barely an edge over Indiana. I'd really love to pick Indiana, but I just can't. So now moving to the West, to what seems like now the de facto Big Ten West championship game.
Although we've said that in each of the last 3 weeks with Northwestern's matchups.
Right, and I think that just goes to show you that the path to the Big Ten championship game in the West runs through Evansville. And I think this one is probably the last time we'll say that, because these two teams clearly have separated themselves at the top. So let's finally get into it. Number 10, Wisconsin Badgers at the number 19th ranked Northwestern Wildcats. Saturday at 2:30 p.m. on ABC. Jared, Joseph, Tim, and Will all picked Wisconsin. Paul, who's your pick in that one?
A similar one to the last matchup where I want to go with Northwestern over the traditional favorite. But, yeah, I mean, once again, taking a look at the numbers, both defenses have been lights out so far this season. I know Wisconsin's only played 2 games, but giving up 7 against Illinois and 11 against Michigan. That being said, Northwestern's offense hasn't been the most consistent, 28 points per game, but against Iowa, Nebraska, Purdue, those are respectable teams, but I just don't really think that's going to be enough to beat Wisconsin in their defense versus Wisconsin's offense. Once again, only 2 games, but 45 against Illinois and 49 against Michigan. Graham Mertz struggled a little bit in the first quarter against Illinois, but other than that, he's been lights out. I just don't see Wisconsin ran through Michigan's defense. They ran through Michigan's defense like it was Swiss cheese. I just don't see them, laying down against Northwestern. So unless they have another COVID strike, I don't see them losing this one.
So Northwestern is an interesting team. They've been consistent. They've won close games, like you said. But Wisconsin clearly seems to be another tier. I think we can all acknowledge that. COVID withstanding, this has been a top-tier team in the nation as far as their performance. Granted, we've only seen them twice. I think they're really going to establish themselves as a playoff contender now. We have to remember, because of COVID, they already missed 2 games, so it's not even in their control. If they miss a game because another team gets COVID, they're not eligible for the Big Ten championship game. But I'll be honest, if this team goes 6-0 in conference play and beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, this is a playoff contender. This team is really good at all phases of the game. So I'm going with Wisconsin, and that's our 3rd straight clean sweep, and that doesn't bode well for us. So you know where to put your money. All right, next up, we've got the 14th ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys at the 18th ranked Oklahoma Sooners, Saturday at 6:30 p.m. on ABC. We finally have some disagreement amongst us. Jared goes with State, while Joseph goes with the Sooners, and then Tim and Will also going with Oklahoma State. Paul, who's your pick in this one?
So once again, the traditional favorite, and going by the numbers, I would go with Oklahoma. But taking a bigger look at some of these numbers and just the players in general, Oklahoma State's been more consistent. Sanders at QB has been lighting up the scoreboard a little bit more since we saw them earlier in the season. The loss to Texas does not look good for Oklahoma State, but the win against Iowa State, I think, is what stands out. Their defense played lights out in that game, and obviously it's a different game now. Oklahoma's put up 62 in the last 2 games, but that's against Texas Tech and Kansas. I just don't know if those 2 defenses are on the same level as Oklahoma State's. So that being said, I got to go with Oklahoma State, even though it may be the underdog at this point.
So, right, you've said it. Oklahoma lost 2 early games that pretty much, for all intents and purposes, took them out of the Big 12 race. Assuming, especially if they would have lost that close Red River rivalry game to Texas. But they're back in the thick of things. If they beat Oklahoma State, they're in the Big 12 championship game, assuming they don't lose another game. They're playing for something. I mean, this is real. They could go to a near 6 bowl still. So that being said, who's playing better right now? Like you said, Oklahoma State's had a lot of slip-ups. And outside of the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, Oklahoma's been golden the last 3 or 4 games. Do I really want to put my faith in Oklahoma's defense? No. Do I even think Spencer Rattler is a really good quarterback? No. Why am I doing this? I'm not entirely sure, but I just have a feeling that the Sooners, just with the way they've been playing, can pull this one off. So very, very reluctantly, I go with the Oklahoma Sooners in that one. So that's it for our college football picks. Now moving on to 2 NFL games. That's right, you get 6 picks this week. More bang for your buck. So we got 2 really big matchups. One in the AFC, one in the NFC. First, the AFC matchup, the Tennessee Titans at the Baltimore Ravens, Sunday at noon on CBS. Jared, Joseph going with the Ravens, while Tim is going with the Titans, and then Will also going with the Ravens. Paul, you're picking this one.
And, the Ravens game last week was telling, I think. We talked about last year how their game against the Patriots, when they won by 17, was kind of the first time we said, okay, this Baltimore team is good. They're gonna be good in the playoffs, and they're gonna go places. I think it's the flip side this year. Their loss to the Patriots this year is just kind of our telling that they're not gonna be good. And I don't think it's over for the Ravens necessarily, but I just don't see them winning this game because if they can't stop the run, like they didn't against New England, they're not going to stop Derrick Henry. It's going to be rough. I know the Titans lost to the Colts as well, but I think the Titans bounce back, and I just don't see the Ravens doing that. So I'm going to go with Tennessee on this one.
I agree with you. That loss to New England was shocking for Baltimore. It exposed things we saw in the Pittsburgh game and we'd been seeing in the previous weeks where they were unable to put away lesser opponents. For instance, the Philadelphia Eagles were a 2-point conversion away from taking Baltimore to overtime in Week 6. Tennessee, that loss to the Steelers withstanding, have been tremendous. They've played consistent football. And are they over-reliant on Derrick Henry in the run game? Yes, maybe so. But what New England showed is that you can run on Baltimore. So Tennessee should be running all day on this Ravens defense. They should be fine, honestly. Very confidently picked Tennessee, although this one could come back to bite me. But I think the Tennessee defense also understands the blueprint. They have the physicality to handle the Ravens' run game. So I'm going with Tennessee on that one. So moving on to our final pick'em of the episode, we got the Los Angeles Rams at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Monday at 7:15 p.m. on ESPN. Jared and Joseph going with the Buccaneers, Tim going with the Rams, while Will is going with the Bucs. Paul, who's your pick in that one?
Yeah, both teams coming off of a rough loss and then a bounce back win after that. First, the Rams losing to Miami, and honestly, Miami's getting up there. I don't think that's a bad loss at this point. But then a bounce back win against Seattle at home really kind of surprised me. I had Seattle in the pick'ems last week. And then the Buccaneers, obviously, the blowout loss to the Saints, and then a bounce back win against the Panthers. I think it's really tough to tell right off the bat because I want to go with the Rams just with their look against the Seattle Seahawks. But, we've mentioned it. Russell Wilson's been kind of falling off from his, early MVP hype, few interceptions. It's just not going to cut it for me. Seattle, I think they're still a quality team. I think that's still a quality win for the Rams. But they're not that number one, maybe number two team that we've been kind of saying they were this whole time. Tampa Bay, besides that loss to the Saints, actually both losses to the Saints, I think they've been the more consistent team. Their defenses continued to impress, only giving up 22 points a game. And I think they just get the job done at home. I'm reluctant to pick Tampa, but I think they win this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will also pick Tampa Bay. I think the Rams played well against Seattle, but it was close to the very end. They were unable to put away a Seattle offense that was horrible, and they couldn't score late on a Seattle defense that has been also terrible. And then you look at the other side of things. Yeah, Tampa Bay hasn't been perfect, but other than playing the Saints, I mean, they've had some great performances. Some games where they looked like a Super Bowl contender. So I think this is a really important game, obviously, for the NFC standings. Who knows if either of these teams can win their highly competitive divisions, but this could decide who's the 5 seed, who's the 6 seed. Heck, this game might even decide who gets to play Philly. Honestly, the 5 seed might be the most coveted spot other than the 1 seed in the NFC. But that aside, I think Tampa Bay is a better team. They've got the better quarterback, the better offense. I think they've got a lot more weapons, although cannot sleep on some of the Rams' wide receivers and tight ends. And defensively speaking, I think Tampa's got the better overall defense, especially the rush defense. And the Rams have leaned very heavily on the run this season so far. So I'll pick Tampa. And that is it for our weekly pick'ems. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your own unqualified opinions in the comment section down below. We'll see you guys next time.